All right, everybody, we're back, and today we are ranking Christopher Nolan's best movies from worst to the best. Funny enough, this will be a top 10 list with an honorable mention. I believe Oppenheimer is now his 12th film. But before we start, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell button. I want you to smash the like button, please. All right, so let's get right into it. This video is not going to be very detailed. I'm not going to really get into the nuances and the storylines and the themes of each movie because that would take way too long. Okay, so here we go. At the honorable mention spot, I have Tenet from 2020. I think it's Christopher Nolan's worst film. It's probably out of all the movies on this list, it's the only one I really just did not enjoy at all. And foremost, I thought it was a little bit too confusing. I also thought that the performances were actually pretty good by Denzel Washington's son, David Washington, I believe his name is. Also thought that Robert Pattinson did a phenomenal job as well. But overall, the movie was just too confusing. It's the only time I've ever been in a theater where I've sat there and said, I have no idea what's going on. Another thing about this movie that I really did not enjoy was that I felt that Christopher Nolan really got away from his style. You know, sticking very story heavy and character driven heavy. I thought that he wanted to make like a sort of Bond, but with his flair on it. And overall, I don't think the movie worked. 10th spot, we have Following from 1998. This is the movie that Christopher Nolan debuted with. It's his first movie. It's a very low budget movie. And overall, I enjoyed it. The first thing I thought when I saw the movie was that it had a very film noir feel. Doesn't really have any actors you've ever heard of. It's a good movie. It's about a guy who's getting followed or he feels like he's being followed. And it just gets you on that, Nolan path. And he really got into his directing style. Okay, at the 9th spot, we have The Dark Knight Rises. I thought out of the three, the Dark Knight trilogy, I thought this was the weakest one. I also thought that some of the fight scenes with Bane were a little bit slow and clunky and really weren't that entertaining. Overall, I think the movie is still very good. I think all the performances from Christian Bale to Anne Hathaway to Tom Hardy to Morgan Freeman were all excellent. I think that the ending of the movie was very, very strong. It was very emotional. Building with, the Hans Zimmer score at the end was really a great way to end the trilogy. But overall, at the 9th spot, I have The Dark Knight Rises. At the 8th spot, I have Dunkirk. Dunkirk, for me, was a movie that I was very excited for. It's the true story of the World War II battle, Dunkirk, in which basically the English forces were pinned on a French beach by the German forces. I thought the movie had some really good aspects, and I think it had some poor aspects. To start off, the poor aspects, I wasn't a fan of the Harry Styles casting. I thought his acting was okay at best. He definitely looked the part, but his acting was a little bit weak in the movie. I thought Tom Hardy's acting and Cillian Murphy's acting was obviously, as usual, very good. I also thought that the movie, he made a decision to go PG-13 on the movie with no blood. I think that was a mistake. If you've ever seen movies like Black Hawk Down or Saving Private Ryan, you know that, it's important to show that graphic nature because that's what war is. It's graphic. So overall, I thought Dunkirk was a pretty solid film. I don't think it was his best, but at the 8th spot, I have Dunkirk. Okay, at the 7th spot, I have 2002's Insomnia. What did I think about this movie? Number one, I think it's very underrated. I think that the performances between Al Pacino and Robert Williams, that chemistry was incredible. I thought Hilary Swank was the unsung hero of the movie as one of the detectives. Also, again, we have another great ending by Nolan, which will and has become a staple of his films, that he always knows. I mean, it's very known that you have to have a great ending to have a great movie, and he is the master of endings. Yeah, overall, this was a detective thriller that takes place in Alaska. I thought this movie was the first time I saw in a Nolan film the subplots. It's very hard in a movie to have the main plot and the subplot both be very strong. And in this movie, they were, with Al Pacino not being able to sleep, with Al Pacino mistakenly shooting somebody. This movie is very underrated, and I think it's one of the 10 or 20 best thrillers, just pure thrillers ever made. At the sixth spot, we have Inception, starring my favorite actor in Hollywood. You better believe it, Mr. DiCaprio. Before I start my quick thoughts on Inception, I just want to say that the Hans Zimmer score for Inception is probably top 10 all time for me. Okay, so this movie is very fast paced. It's a thriller. It has a simple plot, but with a lot of layers, both literally and figuratively, as they go between the different dream levels. This was a movie that he made, I believe it was right after Batman Begins, and really catapulted him into the sort of fame that he has now, sitting there with directors like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, David Fincher, and so on. Yeah, Inception is one of the greatest. I think it's definitely one of the top 5 Leonardo DiCaprio movies for sure. That list will come. Maybe around the time Killer of the Flower Moons drop. Okay, so the next 5 movies I consider all masterpieces. Okay, so at the 5 spot, we have Memento. It was tough to decide to put Memento number 5 and Inception number 6. I could have easily, on any day, those two can be inversed. Nolan is very creative in using the camera, using sound, using the lighting, using the music, all the aspects of a film to make you feel what the character's feeling. In Memento, he really highlights this. The flashback scenes, the constant jarring of the camera, the lighting that's always flickering, writing on his arm, writing on his leg, writing on his hand. He wants you to feel what the character of Guy Pearce is feeling. Confusion, lost, indirection. And for me, Memento is a masterpiece. It's number 5. And I don't throw around the word masterpiece very lightly. So overall, it's a movie that really changed my perception on how to view movies and filmmaking. At the 4th spot, we have Batman Begins. I believe in 2005 it was released. To me, the best superhero comic book script of all time. Some iconic quotes, and in particular, the quote that I think of, and in particular, the scene that I think of, is the training scene between Liam Neeson's character Ra's al Ghul and Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne on that ice. Some of the dialogue there is awesome. I think that, before 2005, Batman had kind of hit a lull in the 1990s with the Joel Schumacher films and whatnot. And with this, Nolan brought back Batman. And he brought him back in a great fashion. It also has one of the best endings at the rooftop of a building with Gary Oldman's character, I'm blanking on his name, and with Christian Bale in the Batman suit, and them revealing that it's the Joker who leaves his calling card. Okay, at the 3 spot is going to be Interstellar. Interstellar is a movie that when I first saw it, I would have never put it in my top 5 Christopher Nolan films. But over the last few years, it's really risen a lot. It's a movie like some of my favorites, which are like Seven, No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood. I'm going to start putting Interstellar higher on my all-time list because of not only its rewatchability, but its themes of time, love, and how they can transcend anything. Also, the performances from Matthew McConaughey to Anne Hathaway to even Matt Damon as the robot are really great. This movie is probably his most underrated film, and overall, I think it's one of those that's going to become like a Blade Runner, an all-time cult classic. And yeah, it's at the 3 spot. Okay, at the 2 spot is 2008, The Dark Knight, which I think is still the greatest comic book superhero movie of all time. We have arguably the greatest villain performance on screen ever by Heath Ledger as a Joker. We have, Christian Bale at its height. I love the opening scene of the movie when he shoots out the glass, this long cable for them to shoot across. And while they're robbing the bank, this movie at the time, one of the best superhero films ever made, and it still continues to be. And that's one of the parts of the movie, not only that it's rewatchable, but it still holds up as a top 5 consensus superhero film of all time. It's got great action scenes, great car chase scenes, and is what I think a superhero movie should be. Okay, at the one spot, we have The Prestige. The Prestige, to me, is a Nolan film that you always see it in the top five when people are ranking Nolan films. I think it's his best film ever. It's a movie about dedicating your life to something so much. In this case, it would be for Christian Bale character, and for Hugh Jackman's character, the pursuit of, I guess, creating the ultimate magic trick or the ultimate illusion. It's about dedicating yourself so fiercely and so completely to this pursuit that you are willing to sacrifice your body, literally, to sacrifice love, to sacrifice time with your children. And it's really, to me, at its root, a movie about competition. And this is a common theme with Nolan, no pun intended, that you love the main plot, which is these two magicians competing, but there's so much there's so much subplot that keeps you even more interested and even giving it a greater rewatchability. So The Prestige, to me, is still his greatest film of all time. I'm going to watch Oppenheimer tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to create a short for Oppenheimer. Once I create the short, I will rank it. I'll give it kind of a out of theater reaction ranking to the list I just made. And I'll tell you more or less where it falls, if it falls between whatever, Batman Begins, Memento, or whatever I feel. But overall, thank you again. Like, subscribe, and I'm out of here, guys.